Welcome to the Teaching Bites podcast. Here are your hosts, Fred and Sharon Jaravada.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, I have a very special guest, and she's a good friend of mine. We have Miss Amabelle Sze, and she is a third grade teacher right now. I used to work with her at Stewart Hall for Boys, and we started both as associates, and that was way back in the mid-2000s, I believe. Now, Amabelle, she's from the Midwest. She is from Wisconsin. She went to USC and I believe University of Illinois. And we worked in second grade together. And I know she has a lot of experience. She's gone to Lucy Calkins' writing project. I think you also went to Howard Gardner's Project Zero.
That's right.
Project. And also, last year, you just received the Teaching Award for Excellence, the Herbst Award, right?
Right.
Very cool, Amabelle. So first of all, Amabelle, thank you for joining our show. And I know I just gave a really brief intro of what you've done. Can you tell us your origin story for our listeners?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Fred. This is a great honor. So when I moved to San Francisco, I started working for a .com, and it became very apparent very quickly that .com work was not for me. I worked a couple of months, and, I was responsible. I would get up, I would go to work, but after a couple of months, I just dreaded going into work. I dragged my feet, and I really just didn't want to do it. And at the same time, I've always loved working with kids. So I started volunteering at a YMCA preschool in Chinatown, and that was just so much more enjoyable. I mean, even though kids were biting each other and things like that, it was just, yeah,
it's ruthless.
Not often, just once in a while. But it was fun, and the kids were just really sweet and engaged, and it made me realize that that's really what I wanted to do. So it was a blessing in disguise when I got laid off. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend who grew up in San Francisco, and I asked her how I might get into teaching. And she said I should look at the private schools, at the associate programs there. And so I looked at Stewart Hall, and I worked there with you for a couple of years, for 3 years at Stewart Hall. And then I got my credential while I was teaching, and I was at Cathedral School for Boys for a year. And then I was fortunate enough to land a job at San Francisco Friends School. And I loop actually between third and fourth grade. So I teach both. Wow. Not every single year do I loop, but.
Right. So cool. So I'm very curious also about your school now. But before we do that, so would you say that those kids biting each other was the aha moment? If not,
no.
What is the aha moment for you?
Actually, the aha moment was that first day at my interview at Stewart Hall. It was that class. Do you remember that class with obviously all those boys, but
that class, right?
Yeah.
I think they're adults now, so.
Right, I know, yes. So
did you see them on Facebook? Sorry, I'm like, we're tangent.
I know.
I see them on Facebook. They're adults now.
They are adults. They're in college.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange. It makes me feel old. Right. But when I was asked to do a read aloud with them, and I don't even remember what book it was, but just how excited they were about hearing the book and the questions that they had. That was the aha moment for me. That first day that I was in the classroom, I knew right away that teaching was for me.
Nice. Okay, so yeah, that class was an interesting class, and I liked the class a lot. Okay,
yeah.
So have you been teaching over now 15 years or so? 16 years?
Yeah, probably about 15, 16 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time now. Okay, so what's the one thing you wish you had known before you started teaching?
I wish I had known how exhausting it was, that it's just a lot of hard work. I think that
Are you talking about mentally, physically?
It's all of it. I would say more so mentally, right? Because people look at teachers and they think to themselves, oh, they get their summer breaks, they get their winter breaks. And you know what? We get those breaks because we need them, right? Like we're in there every single day. We're trying to assess 20 to 22 kids and like figure out where they're at and be able to meet them. And to be honest, you have to, like, each kid is a different little puzzle, and constantly you're trying to figure them out. And that's actually why I loop, is because once you figure, and not that kids are puzzles that you can figure out, but once you figure out some strategies that work with individual kids, it's nice to be able to follow them for another year so that you already have some tools in your tool belt that work with that kid.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you motivate your students?
Lots of different things. So I think that kids like to know that they're not being talked down to. They like to know what they're working on has some real life application, and they also like to have some choice in their work, right? So obviously with reading and writing, that's a little bit easier. But this year we've started doing passion projects. Are you familiar with?
No, I'm not. What's passion? What's that?
So evidently Google devotes 20% of their employees' time to doing projects, and so then there's greater productivity during their 80%
Yeah,
of the
this is
time,
the 20% project, right?
Right, the 20% project. So we're not donating, we're not doing 20% of time, but we are having kids do passion projects, and it's amazing. The kids are so motivated. They're so excited about their passion projects, and this spills over to the other academic areas. So it's interesting because they also incorporate a lot of what they've learned into their passion projects, right? As they're doing research, they're cross-synthesizing information, and they're getting feedback from their peers. They're doing they're using all these tools that we've taught them to use, and they start to realize how those two things can be connected, right? The things that I'm teaching them in class as well as the things they want to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the question of the people have doubted the 20% project. How do you find time to do that?
You know, if you realize that it's kind of like funding for schools or funding for public health, right? You realize that if you give the time to that project, that it's going to pay off in the end, right? So we actually only give them 30 minutes each Friday.
Okay.
And so it's not a ton of time, but at the same time, a lot of them will say, hey, can I work on my passion project during choice time? Or can I work on my passion project during this recess? Right? So they go over and above even though we only give them 30 minutes.
That's pretty cool. Can you quickly name some cool projects that you've seen the kids are doing?
So it has a huge range. So it can just be something as simple as like, I want to learn how to draw a face better, right? So they're getting feedback from their friends. They're like watching how-to videos online and reading into books and things like that. And some kids are studying World War II planes, and they want to make a cardboard replica of the plane. So they've like printed out blueprints. Some kids want to figure out how 3D printers work, and they want to make a Eiffel Tower with the 3D printer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So you let them go to the internet, let them research and all that. It's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, thanks.
Very cool. Okay. So, what is a favorite quote of yours? Or mantra?
All right. So I've got this. It's a pretty long quote. So
okay, go for it.
Brace yourself. So basically, when I went to Project Zero at Harvard a couple of years ago, they gave us a whole bunch of booklets to read, pamphlets and articles, and there's one that really stood out for me, and it's by this Danish philosopher, and I think his name is Soren Kierkegaard. And he talks about the nature of understanding. And what's significant about this is that it's 1854 when he says this. So this is a long time ago.
It's a long time ago, yeah.
And he says this. He says, if real success is to attend the effort to bring a man to a definite position, one must first of all take pains to find him where he is and begin there. This is the secret of the art of helping others. Anyone who has not mastered this himself, deluded is himself deluded when he proposes to help others. In order to help others effectively, I must understand what he understands. If I do not know that, my greater understanding will be of no help to him. If, however, I'm disposed to plume myself on my greater understanding, it is because I am vain or proud. So that at bottom, instead of benefiting him, I want to be admired. But all true effort to help does not mean to be a sovereign, but to be a servant. That to help does not mean to be ambitious, but to be patient. That to help means to endure for the time being the imputation that one is in the wrong and does not understand what the other understands. For to be a teacher does not mean simply to affirm that such a thing is so, or to deliver a lecture, etc. No, to be a teacher in the right sense is to be a learner. Instruction begins with when you, the teacher, learn from the learner, put yourself in his place so that you may understand what he understands and in the way he understands it.
Wow,
So,
it's so powerful. And this is
Thanks.
this is a long time ago, also 1850,
This is
right?
1854. That's right. So other than the fact that it's all the learner is male, of course our learners are male and female these days, but other than that, it's incredibly insightful.
And it's so relevant today, what we're doing, right? It's just what we're trying to do. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I'm going to have to you're going to have to send me the link to that so I can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so cool. Okay. So, being a learner today, you're going to fail and so on. And I'm sure as a teacher, you've had some moments of that oh well moment. Can you share with us an oh well moment that you had?
Yeah. I had one actually just this past year. So we, in third grade, we do a baby literary essay unit. So we read texts and it's supposed to be a short writing unit, just 1 to 2 weeks long, right? And so kids haven't really done essays much before third grade, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of graphic organizers to help kids write essays or to help people write essays, right? And it's easy, right? Just fill in the boxes. And that graphic organizers have their place. But for a general population, we're like, you know what? If we just give them the graphic organizer, it'll be easy. And we can just say, all right, put your thesis in this box. And now put your 3 supporting details in this box, right? And so we tried it. And that's exactly what I did. Okay, your thesis goes in the thesis box. And your 3 supporting details go in this box. And it was clear to myself right away that I was not having fun teaching. It was really rote and robotic.
Yeah, very mechanical. Sounds very mechanical, right?
Really mechanical. And the kids were not having fun either. They were just, it was like their eyes kind of glazed over and they were not having fun either. And so, you know, Jake, my co-teacher and we talked to each other. We were like, let's not do this. So after a day and a half, we were like, let's not do this anymore. Let's actually teach the writer and not the writing, right? So we scrapped that and we decided to look at mentor literary essays and say, hey, what do you notice about this literary essay? What parts does it have? And so then we did that, and then we wrote some literary essays together, and it was much better the kids. And now that we're in our next essay unit, the kids know how to write essays, and it's amazing.
Wow, that's a cool. Yeah, that's a very good moment. You moved on. You knew already it was basically crap, right? You just didn't want to do it, right? It doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense for your class. Didn't make sense for your teaching. And you just moved on, right? That's cool. Okay. So what's your biggest challenge now? Of all the years you've been teaching, what's your biggest challenge today?
What's my biggest challenge today? I would say, well, that's a good question.
Well, if not today, of all the years, you know, what stands out? What stood out that really challenged you?
Well, I would just say, probably my biggest challenge. I was gonna say my biggest challenge in general is fighting against. inherently kind of a short-tempered person, right?
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yelling comes very easily to me. And so that would be what I would say is my biggest challenge, beginning teaching, in the middle of teaching, and even now.
Right.
It was probably hardest when I was postpartum with Maddie, right?
Right.
That was rough there. But since I've started, my students and I have started doing mindfulness meditation together. And it's amazing how much that helps me too. I wouldn't have expected it to impact my own own patience level that much, but it's twofold. Like, one, I can take mindful breaths, and I can remind myself to be grounded and to remind myself of where I am and how I have this relationship with my kids. But I can also, like, when they're getting kind of rowdy, I can say to them, hey, I can feel the energy in our classroom is getting a little high. Let's all just take 1 minute of mindful breaths. Let's go.
Right.
And we can do that together. And it kind of changes the whole, like the classroom's not stressed or energetic anymore. It's just everybody's brought down a level, and it's really nice.
So how do you do that? What's the how do you prompt them, or what's the action itself?
For mindful breathing, well, there's a whole curriculum that we do. There's Mindful Schools that's based out of, I think, Emeryville or Oakland.
Okay.
And so they have some coursework that teachers can take, right? And so I teach about once a week or a couple of times a week. We do explicit instruction in mindfulness. So like we usually start with mindful breathing, like pay attention to your, where do you feel your breath? Okay, now try breathing in and counting 1 and breathing out, and then go up to 5 and then start over at 1, something like that. And it also helps that I'm at a Quaker school, so we have meeting for worship once a week, which is this half an hour in total silence. So I tell them, this is a really great place where you can use some of that mindfulness and practice it.
Yeah, that's what we're doing also the past couple of years with our school. We at Stewart Hall Convent, we also have espacio, a moment of silence, of calming each other down, and just being mindful, like you said. And that's a very big thing, just not for the students, but also for the teachers, right? We all need that.
We all do.
Yeah, and I think that's a great practice. Now, you work at a Quaker school, and you used to work at our school at Convent Stewart Hall. Can you tell us some differences between, like, if some of our audience listeners, they don't know what a Quaker school is? Can you just quickly just give us a general things that a Quaker school is about?
Yeah, so Quaker schools, there are a lot in Pennsylvania because William Penn, who was a Quaker, came to the United States when his father sent him here. So a lot of Pennsylvania actually was kind of a safe haven for Quakers, right? So Quakers believe in simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship. Like those we call them our spices. They're our testimonies. And, Quakers, it's interesting because a lot of people, when they think of Quakers, they kind of, they think of like, Quaker oatmeal, right? Or like Shakers or, but the most amazing thing about Quakers is that they've always been very progressive. So we actually, before our meeting for worship, we always have Quaker Corner, and we learn about famous Quakers. And they're always a lot of them are actually women who are outspoken all the way back to like the 1600s, right? Women who are outspoken, who think that, they're abolitionists, they're suffragists, and they're just really amazing, brave people.
Right. That's amazing. That's very cool. And I'm learning a little bit of it. And I know a lot of people, at least in the East Coast, I believe the Obamas, I think they send their children to a Quaker school over there in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So it's very cool. And I'm glad there's something like that out there. Okay.
Thanks.
So, tell us. First of all, I know you play the piano, right? You're a musician in general, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Tell us what instruments you play.
So I started on violin when I was 2, and I switched to viola when I was like maybe 9 years old, and I started piano when I was about 6. And so in college, I actually majored in viola performance and minored in piano performance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does the music play? No pun intended. How does it play into your teaching?
You know, I can tell when we do readers and writers workshop, we do a lot of stories and our connections, right? And so we talk about setting goals, right? So when kids are looking at rubrics and they're trying to figure out what specifically they can work on as readers and writers, I might tell a story about being a pianist, right? Like that, there was one specific skill I wanted to get better at and how I worked at that one specific skill. I also, we do it, we do a lot of fun things with it more so than anything else. So, again, Jake, my partner teacher, he has a keyboard in his classroom. And so one day I had my viola and he played Adele's Hello on the piano and I played the singing part on the viola. And it was just really cute because the kids are all singing along and, you know, it builds community that way. We had a mandolin in our classroom the other day and so same thing. I just played it while we were doing reading. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The music's very calming for the kids and unifying too.
It's another tool that you have for your teaching. And that's great. Right. You're bringing something personal to your kids, and I really appreciate that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what's your favorite book or movie? Is there a book or movie or something that in media, multimedia that helps inspires you?
Yeah. So, have you watched there's this Vimeo video called Austin's Butterfly? Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
So it's this video of this teacher who's talking to this class of, I think they're first graders, and he shows them a real picture of a butterfly. And then he says, okay, so I told this kid, Austin, to draw this butterfly. And he shows Austin's picture of this butterfly, right? And, you know, he's saying to the class, like, what could Austin do to make it better? And the kids just have this great feedback. They would say things like, well, really, the wing should be more of a triangle. And the teacher said, oh, that's amazing because that's exactly the kind of feedback that Austin got so that he did a second iteration of his butterfly, right? And then the kids give more feedback and then he shows them the later and later drafts of this butterfly, right? Mm-hmm. And I love it. And by the end, it looks it's like a young kid who drew this picture and it looks very similar to the photograph by the end of all of his different drafts. So I love this video for all sorts of reasons, right? One, we're always talking to the kids about grit and, you know, perseverance, right? But also that grit and perseverance by themselves are not what people need to succeed, right? They need to be able to get feedback. They need to be able to take that feedback and change what they're doing based on it. So, you know, this is like all across the board academically, reading, writing, math, passion projects, everything that they do, anything that they do, it could be soccer, right? They can take this idea and apply it. So we watched it as a class so that the kids can hear what specific feedback sounds like. But I also love it because it doesn't just apply to the kids, right? So Jake and I will watch each other teach lessons and we'll give each other feedback. Or, you know, we'll say, oh, you know, one thing that you did great was this thing. I also saw you do this and I'm going to change it when I teach my own class because of this thing or one thing or another. So it's great because it's something that the kids can learn from and it's also something that I can learn from as well.
That's awesome. Okay, I gotta find that link, and I will share that also. That's so cool. I'm gonna watch it tonight.
It's good.
How long is the video?
I think 7 minutes. It's not too long. Yeah,
that's good. I have a short attention span.
Yeah.
So. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so favorite tech tool. What's your favorite tech tool?
So it's probably both my favorite and my least favorite at times. The smartboard is pretty great when it's great, when it's working, right? So and the reason why I love the smartboard so much is because we can watch Austin's Butterfly, right? I can just put it up there. I also love that it makes multimodality learning so much more accessible, right? So I can if I'm reading out loud from a book, I can put it on the screen as well, or a certain passage on the screen. I can also, as I'm like talking about my teaching point, I can have visuals on the board so that the kids can really picture what I'm talking about.
Right.
And I love the fact that I can prep it beforehand, so I don't have to be writing on the board as I'm talking, which just slows everything down, right?
Yes.
And it also saves work for next year. So next year I have all these lessons that I can just tweak, and I already have them all typed up.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Now, what's the issue with smartboards though? What are they? I think it's not connecting something. Are they not calibrating?
So ours are a few years old,
Okay.
and they are they're projectors. So the newer ones are LED touchscreens, right? And I'm guessing that that'll be better. The projectors right now, what happens with ours is that if the sensors get dirty, then it has a little bit of a hard time. The software, it feels like it just needs to be updated pretty often. Otherwise, It doesn't work. The projector, because we're on our school is very sun filled. So sometimes the projectors, the kids are like, I can't see what's on the board in the afternoon at certain hours.
Yes. No, that's cool. Yeah. I saw some pictures of your school and a lot of sunlight, as I noticed about it. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really great.
Like that. Okay. So, we're talking about Tech Tool. How about, what's your favorite resource for ideas?
Yeah, so I don't have one favorite resource for ideas, but my first go-to resource are mostly teachers. So I'm very fortunate that I work in this community of really amazing teachers. So the first person that I would go to, of course, is Jake, because first of all, he's new this year to Friend School. So he's got a lot of different ideas, kind of fresh new ideas that we wouldn't have necessarily have thought of because so when you have somebody from the outside come in, you get new ideas, right? Yeah. But also, so David Lewis is a middle school math teacher, and if I have a question about math, he's always got his door open. Or the other day, I was asking Annie Gwynn Vaughn, a middle school humanities teacher, about some famous Quaker that I remembered a story about, but I couldn't remember her name. Right. So there are just people all around our school that are doing amazing things. But I do follow Mindshift a lot on Facebook. I do like to, so in terms of that sort of thing, I do like to read a lot of the brain research and just to see best strategies for helping support kids in our classrooms, since we've got a diverse set of learners in our classrooms.
That's cool. Yeah, and I agree with you. One of the biggest resources, my favorite, is also like you. It's the teacher next door.
Yeah.
Down the hallway.
Really?
I'm not good at math or I'm not good at science, but hey, we have a science teacher down the hallway.
Right.
So that's cool.
Really great. Yeah.
Okay, so I know you mentioned, let me back up a little bit. You do a lot. I know you do a lot. What motivates you to get through your day? What keeps you going?
So definitely the kids. See, watching the kids, they progress and they learn and they grow up so much, and it's really incredible. But at the same time, now my own kid is at my school, and there's something special about that. It feels like,
but she's younger, right? Not yet.
She is younger,
okay.
Yeah. But there's something that feels like when I'm teaching my own class, it almost feels like I'm teaching her. I'm not sure.
No, I agree with you. I have my son AJ. He's in kindergarten, and I teach mostly middle form kids, and I feel you where now, and I hate to say this now, but it feels more personal now. You know, it's more like, I've always thought I was a good teacher, but now it's real. it's serious because my son is coming up to the grades now, right? And it's not to say I wasn't being real before, but now it's just hitting home, right? And you always want the best for your child, but also for the students. You want to make the school better now,
right?
So, yeah, and I agree with you right there, and then it's a big thing. Okay, so I know you mentioned the 20% project, the passion project, you call it. Would that be your ta-da moment, or is there a different moment that you can say, "Hey, ta-da! This is what I do. This is what I do best. This is what I love."
Yes, actually. So I had a student. So at Friend School, we do meetings for business, which are like just times when we can all get together and we can talk about a social emotional issue all together, right? And so I had a student. I'm just going to call her Jane. And Jane was, she was kind of a bossy kid, right? And she would just boss people around, and other kids got really taken aback by her. And people stopped wanting to be her friend because they perceived her as bossy, right? And so I talked with her about it, and I said, do you want to bring this to the class and talk to them about it, that it's something you're working on? And so that they know that, right? Because most of us are more sympathetic towards somebody if we know that they're working on something. And she said, okay, I'm going to do that. So so she brought it to the class, and the kids said, we don't mind that, that you've got a strong personality, but we want to be able to disagree with you, and we want you to be able to hear us. And she was like, okay, I get that. But I also need you to understand that, like, I'm trying not to boss you around, and I'm also trying to be more open to hearing you, right? And so it actually went great, and afterwards, kids were asserting themselves more with her, and it was a great relationship builder. But what really impacted me was years later, when she was in middle school, I heard about this soccer practice where the coach didn't show up, or the coach was really late. And so this girl, Jane, was like, she and her friend, they were both like, all right, well, let's get started with our drills. Let's go. And they started with their drills, and she actually got the practice up and running. So what I loved about it was that she was able to keep all her social relationships, and she was also able to keep her assertive personality while also, I guess both of those things, right? She was able to be this well-connected person and also be able to be assertive and take control when control needed to be taken.
Right. That's cool.
So, yeah. So I just feel like, so those meetings for business that we do when we have the kids openly talk about issues and talk to each other, I feel like they're amazing opportunities for kids to assert themselves and build relationships.
That's amazing. Cool.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. So anything coming up soon? Anything that is exciting you right now? A new project you're thinking about, or PD, or trip?
Yeah. So I'm actually in the middle of this thing called, it sounds pretty heavy. It's called Spirited Practice and Renewed Courage, and it's Spark. And it's basically bridging Quaker philosophy with Quaker education. So I've already gone once, and it's 3 more times over the next year and a half. And what's amazing about it is that they're Quaker educators from all these different places. So, for example, like the Obama Girls School, right? From Sidwell Friends, and from all these places in Pennsylvania and all on the East Coast. And I get to meet all these different educators and hear about their experiences at Quaker schools. And I feel like there's so much of Quaker education. The Quaker education piece really fits my idea of what education should look like, right? The fact that the teacher's not the person who holds all the knowledge. The teacher's the person who helps facilitate learning in the classroom, right? And that there is no one sacred space, that all space is sacred, right? So that they respect each, and there's nobody's higher than one another. Like we're all equals. And so I'm really excited about continuing to go to Spark for the next year and a half.
It sounds very powerful, and yeah, that's amazing.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm excited for you for doing that. That sounds so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so time-saving tip, Ms. Z. What do you do? What's a time hack? What do you do? How do you save time?
It's funny because it's not really a time-saving tip. But watching my co-teacher Jake teach,
Jake has a lot
Jake
of
comes up a lot.
love.
Yeah, we have a good relationship.
That's cool. What's up, Jake?
So, but well, actually, before he came to our school, when I was interviewing him, he was like, yeah, like sometimes my co-teacher and we just practice our lessons on each other. And I was like, oh man,
Really?
like, how late do you stay at work? This sounds terrible.
Yeah.
But actually, it's amazing because all those times that, when you're teaching a lesson and, there's some little slip up, or if your teaching point is not cemented into your brain or something like that, all of that comes up when you're like teaching it to your co-teacher. So the other great thing about it, so one, like when you're teaching it, you feel more confident, you know what you're doing, and it goes more smoothly. But at the same, it's because you know it better. So it's not that it's time saving per se, but it's I guess it just it makes me feel like my craft is improved significantly when I do that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's deeper.
It is deeper.
It's deeper, and it saves you time when you do it next time.
Yes.
Right. So the intentional practice of your lesson plans, of your lessons. So how late do you? So I'm trying to figure it out though. So you do invest more time up front. That means that.
Right, and honestly, you don't have to run through the entire lesson. It really probably just takes like 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
And then you feel more confident when you're teaching it. So even if I'm listening to him teach, I feel better about teaching my own lesson because I've already heard it taught once. And it's also, you're also learning like different strategies. Like he might say something, he does this like, give me a silly moose. And he like holds one antler up to his head. He's like, give me a silly moose antler if you've done this. And, and it's just to like engage the kids a little bit more and get some laughter. And so like things like that are not things that I would have normally thought of.
Right.
So then I'm able to incorporate into my classroom.
That's cool. You're finding more tips and more, and I do like that. You are investing more time. It's true, but I like it how because it's going to get better.
Right. And it also feels like a mini PD in a way, right? Mm-hmm. So rather than going out, see, that's how it's saving time.
And money, it seems. It's very cool.
Right, that's right.
The PD part. Okay. All right. So here's the question. What's the best advice you've ever received? And at the same time, what's the best advice you give to other teachers?
So it's a little bit one and the same. So Quakers believe in this idea of continuous revelation, right? That like the truth is never fully revealed, that you're constantly striving for it. And as a teacher, I think that that's definitely true, right? And that I'm constantly striving to get better in my practice, and that I'll have never perfected it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that would be my advice as well. Like just like in writing, writing teachers say, when you're done, you've just begun.
Right.
And that feels like the same. When I was at Stewart Hall, 2-3 years into it, I was like, I am a master teacher. I'm amazing.
Yes.
And, and I feel like it was because I was young and I didn't have that humility yet. Right. Mm-hmm. And now 15 years later or whatever it is, now I'm starting, I finally realized that I've just begun and I'm still,
No, that's good. That's a mark of a true teacher. You always try. You're never going to be perfect, but you always try. You keep doing better, right?
That's right.
That's cool. And that's why I'm glad to have you as a guest in our show because
Thanks, Fred.
That alone, that advice, to us is just very valuable, and hopefully our fellow teachers can not take it so seriously. At least and then keep going, right? Keep going. Okay, right. Miss Amabelle Sze. Amabelle, thank you again so much for joining our show. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Obviously, since I've said Jake like 10 times,
I gotta be Jake.
I would just like to say that Jake is totes legit, as the young ones say. So, so I'd like to give out a shout out to him, who's on his honeymoon right now in Paris.
Congratulations.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, Fred.
Amabelle, thank you again. See you later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Teaching Bites podcast at www.teachingbites.com.